Some stories refuse to end. They are not merely told. They are inscribed upon the world, their echoes traveling through time, buried in stone and silence, waiting for the one foolish enough to listen. Dr. Layla Nassar believed she had closed that story. She had sealed the tomb, buried the past, and fled the whispers of the sand. But the desert remembers, and the priest was still waiting. He was always waiting. The night draped itself over Cairo, a heavy, starless shroud. In Layla's apartment, the air was thick with the dust of antiquity. It was a museum of a life spent chasing ghosts, littered with relics and half-catalogued fragments of a history she could no longer escape. On her desk, a small obsidian shard, once hidden away in a lead-lined box, now lay wrapped in a simple linen cloth, and it pulsed, faintly, rhythmically, as if a dark and patient heart beat within its polished facets. For weeks she had fought to ignore it, to dismiss the subtle signs of its reawakening. The voices had returned. They were no longer confined to the chaotic landscapes of her dreams. Now they were companions to her waking hours, whispers that fluttered just behind her reflection, clinging to the glass like condensation. It whispered, "Layla, come back. You left the door open." The phenomenon was maddeningly precise. Every time she looked in the mirror, her own image seemed to lag, delayed by a fraction of a second. It was as if something on the other side was struggling to mimic her movements, a puppet master with clumsy, uncertain hands. The reflection was no longer hers alone. Beside the shard, her father's journal lay open, its pages brittle with age and desperation. The ink had faded, but the final line he ever wrote was burned into her memory, a haunting epitaph that now felt like a direct warning. The priest was not buried. He was sealed. The pull became an undeniable physical force. It was a sickness in her blood, a magnetic call she could no longer resist. At dawn, under a sky the color of bruised plums, she packed her tools, her torch, and the forbidden artifact. The drive south was a silent pilgrimage back to the source of her dread, to the one place she swore she would never see again, the hidden tomb beneath the sands of Saqqara. The desert greeted her with an unnerving stillness. Even the wind, that ever-present voice of the dunes, seemed to hold its breath. The tomb entrance, which she and her team had meticulously reburied, was now partially exposed. The sand had shifted away from the stone as if it wanted her to return, as if the earth itself was complicit in this cursed reunion. When the heavy stone door slid open, the air that rushed out was wrong. It was cold. Not the cool, musty air of a subterranean chamber, but a profound, predatory cold that leached the warmth from her skin. She descended, her torch casting a nervous, flickering light against the walls. The hieroglyphs, serpents, and eyes and grasping hands seemed to move in her peripheral vision. They writhed and blinked, ancient warnings given life by the unsteady flame. And there, at the center of the chamber, it stood, the black mirror. Not a speck of dust had settled on its obsidian surface. No sign of decay marred its perfect, light-devouring sheen. It was just as she had left it, waiting. "Father," she whispered, her voice a fragile tremor in the suffocating silence. "If you're here, I'll find you." As the words left her lips, the mirror shimmered, its surface momentarily losing its solidity. And for a heart-stopping instant, a figure appeared in the reflection, standing just behind her own. It was tall, robed in shadow, its face obscured by a golden funerary mask that gleamed with cold, malevolent light. It whispered, The priest of shadows. Layla froze, her muscles locking in primal terror. The air thickened until it hummed, a low-frequency vibration that resonated deep within her bones. In the mirror, the figure stepped closer, though she herself had not moved an inch. Its voice did not come from the chamber, but crawled directly into her mind, a layered, ancient sound like stone grinding against stone for millennia. "You carry his blood," the voice intoned. "You carry his debt." Layla's breath hitched, a painful knot in her chest. "My father?" "He opened the gate," the priest continued, its mirrored form now looming directly over her reflected shoulder. "I waited for him to return, but only you came." Her torch flickered violently. The flames bent, stretching impossibly toward the mirror, drawn to it by some unseen gravity. A torrent of images flooded her mind, not memories but an invasive psychic wound. She saw her father, years younger, kneeling before this very mirror. He was chanting words she didn't recognize, his eyes wide and blackened with something other than shadow, his mouth whispering a name she could not hear over the roaring in her ears. Layla stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a cry. "No, you're not real. You're just a memory, a phantom." Before she could finish the thought, the reflection moved independently of her. The priest's hand, long and draped in shadow, reached outward. It pressed against the glass from the other side, and on her side, the smooth, solid surface of the obsidian rippled like water. The cold intensified, emanating from the point of contact. "Do you wish to see him again?" the voice asked, its tone now laced with a chilling, seductive promise. Her denial died on her tongue. The longing, the grief, the desperate hope she had carried for years had all coalesced into a single damning whisper. "Yes." Then the priest's voice echoed in her skull. "You must become what he could not." The tune trembled. The stone groaned around her, as if waking from a long and troubled sleep. Her torchlight, once a beacon, dimmed to a faint cluster of embers, plunging the chamber into near-total darkness. From unseen cracks in the walls, a fine black sand began to pour like streams of dried blood. It swirled around her feet, coalescing on the floor, forming intricate sigils that pulsed with a faint, malevolent red light. Layla's body went rigid, seized by an invisible force. She watched in horror as her reflection smiled. It was her face, but the expression was alien, filled with a triumphant and terrifying devotion. The priest began to chant. The mirror blazed with light, its surface erupting with symbols ancient, shifting, geometries that were impossible for the human eye to decipher. She screamed, clapping her hands over her ears, but it was useless. The sound was already inside her skull, a chorus of grating, ancient voices. "Your father traded his life to open the gate," the central voice boomed. "You will finish the offering." A searing pain erupted beneath her skin. She looked down and saw them, the impossible hieroglyphs from the mirror, crawling across her arms, carving themselves into her flesh like brands of living fire. She tried to turn away to break eye contact with the horrific altar, but her body would not obey. Her reflection remained utterly still, staring into the blazing mirror, her eyes now black voids, her lips moving in silent, ecstatic worship. And then silence, a sudden, absolute void of sound and sensation. When Layla opened her eyes, she was no longer in the tomb. She stood in a vast, impossible hall. The floor, walls, and ceiling were carved from a single piece of polished obsidian, stretching into an echoing, infinite darkness. Torches burned in sconces along the walls, but their flames were a ghostly, suffocating blue. In endless, silent rows stood priests, thousands of them, mummified figures wrapped in gold-threaded linen, their heads bowed in unison toward a colossal throne at the far end of the hall. And on that throne sat the priest of shadows. He was no longer a reflection. He was solid, real, and radiating an aura of absolute, timeless power. "You have crossed the veil, child of Nassar," his voice boomed, echoing through the endless space. "You have awakened what your kind wisely forgot." Layla's voice was a fragile thing, lost in the immensity of the hall. Where am I? Where all seekers come," the priest answered, his masked face turning toward her. "When they find what should not be found." Her gaze swept across the silent legions of the mummified, and then she saw him. Standing among the priests, his posture as rigid and lifeless as the rest. His eyes were hollow, his skin gray and cracked like ancient stone. But it was him. "Father?" She breathed, the word a shard of glass in her throat. He looked at her. A faint, tragic smile touched his lips, and from a throat that had not spoken in years, he whispered a single, desperate word. "Run." The hall erupted. The silent, frozen priests shifted as one, a symphony of cracking bindings and rustling linen. Thousands of mummified heads lifted, thousands of dry mouths opened, and a tidal wave of chanting filled the air. They moved toward her, a shambling, relentless army of the damned. Layla ran. She sprinted across the obsidian floor, but the solid ground beneath her feet began to liquefy. The black stone became the same mirror surface from the tomb, reflecting her terror 1,000 times over. An infinity of screaming Laylas, fleeing an infinity of horrors. The priest's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once, a final, chilling decree. There is no death, only reflection. Every light must cast a shadow. The mirror floor rose up to meet her. It did not break. It swallowed her whole. Weeks later, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities officially sealed the site at Saqqara, citing geological instability. No sign of Dr. Layla Nassar was ever found. Her camera was recovered from the sand near the entrance, though. The final footage was corrupted, showing only her walking toward the black mirror, whispering her father's name. And then, static. But forensics recovered one single, intact frame, burned into the digital file like a photographic scar. It showed the mirror, and in the mirror's reflection, Layla stood, her face turned toward the camera, a faint, knowing smile on her lips, while in the foreground her real body stood perfectly still, facing away. The desert keeps its promises. The dead remember their debts. And somewhere, deep beneath the sands, a mirror still stands in the dark. Its surface breathes, ever so slightly, and from its cold, polished depths, a single name is whispered into the eternal silence. Layla. If you hear it calling, don't answer. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with a friend. Subscribe for more content and check out our other stories. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more stories. Goodbye.